I have to use my laptop as a power bank, guys. By the way, I'm with my besties.
That is Elisa Petrov, the 15-year-old girl from Utah who vanished on April 21st. Now, 3 men who allegedly had sexually explicit conversations with this teenage girl, all of them more than twice her age, are in custody. We have new information about them, the sick conversations they had allegedly with this young girl, and the chilling message she potentially left behind on her TikTok with the date police say she ran away. We're on the case presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. It is almost June and we're still searching for Elisa Petrov. This is a search that began at the end of April. It is now happening in multiple states, and we do have a big update on the 3 men in custody in connection to conversations they allegedly had with her online. Before I talk about them, I want to show you what we found on Elisa Petrov's TikTok account. You can look at her profile description. It reads, "Mom and Dad, I love you so much, 4/16/2010 to 4/21/25. That is her birthday and the day that police say she ran away. I also want you to see and hear Elisa Petrov in hopes that it could help in the search to find her. Here are parts of videos that she posted on her public YouTube page.
Guys, my necklace fell off, but I'm like trying to put it back on now. Seriously, it's a good thing like it fell off on my chair.
On her YouTube page, Petrov posted videos that show her being a typical teenager.
And I'm gonna use some browns.
Is anyone missing a little ring?
I wish, bro.
Oh, that might be one of my friends.
In one of the search warrants related to one of the men arrested in connection to those alleged conversations with Petrov online, Elisa did say that she planned to become a vlogger when she turned 18.
Hey, what's in my school backpack as a high school freshie? Here it is. It's heavy.
Let's talk about the 3 men who are in custody. The names of those men are Matthew Menard, a 35-year-old from Miami, 37-year-old William Gleans, who you see here in this mugshot as he's being held in Texas, and 41-year-old Samuel Mitchell, who lived about a half hour from where Petrov lived outside Salt Lake City. Here's the charging document for Menard. Police say the 35-year-old had disturbing conversations about having sex with the 15-year-old girl. Police say he solicited sex, sodomy, and child sex abuse material from the 15-year-old Elisa Petrov. Police say he also came up with a plan for Petrov to escape and meet him in Las Vegas, where he says he was traveling for work in late May. He allegedly told the girl to meet him in Vegas and then they would go to LA before returning to where he lived in Miami, Florida. And in those conversations, again, many of them sexual in nature, too disturbing to show you here. I will tell you that Petrov allegedly was calling Menard daddy, and Menard told her of plans to hide her when they met up by telling people she was his daughter. And it was established before the sexual conversations that Menard knew, according to the documents, that Elisa Petrov was just 15 years old. Now, Samuel Mitchell, who's 41, is also in custody in Salt Lake City. We just learned about him this week. Police say he had disturbing sexual conversations with the teen on the app Discord as well as the app Snapchat. Police say that they went to his house outside Salt Lake, and on his phone, he allegedly had explicit pictures and videos of multiple young girls, one believed to be 12 years old, according to charging documents, and another believed to be 15, but police do not say the images specifically are that of Petrov. But Petrov called Mitchell daddy, according to police, and they talked about playing couples twister and sex monopoly, these documents say. Police say the last time that Mitchell and Petrov spoke was on April 15th. Petrov wrote, quote, "My mom took my phone away. I have your user though. I added you." Mitchell then said, "Oh, is that why there was a screenshot?" Petrov then said, "Like, are we for real meeting? Like, please confirm. Please before tonight, confirm if we are meeting. Please bring condoms." Mitchell later replied, "Hey, sorry, I got really sick." Petrov then said, "So we meeting?" And Mitchell responded, "If you want to hear me sneezing and coughing and getting you sick, plus I wouldn't be much fun." On April 19th, Petrov told Mitchell, "I'm running away. Please don't contact me." And 2 days later, police say Elisa Petrov did. The third man in custody is William Gleans. That's a picture of him. He's 37 years old and he's currently in jail in Texas City, Texas. That's near Galveston on the Gulf Coast. Police found through their investigation that he too allegedly had sexually explicit conversations with the girl. Police say after her mom dropped her off at school on the 21st, she never went to class. Instead, she was seen on surveillance video at a convenience store. Then a stranger gave her a ride to a train station about 20 minutes away in Provo, Utah, and that's the last time that anyone has seen Elisa Petrov, to our understanding. Police say that Petrov was asking people at the train station for ways to get to Las Vegas. Joining us now from Utah is KUTV2 news anchor Brian Schnee, who's been on Law and Crime many times about stories happening in your state, Brian, and you've been covering the Elisa Petrov case pretty closely since she went missing. Now that there are 3 people who are in custody, 2 of them in your state in Utah, and what stands out to you about the suspects who are in custody thus far?
Well, they're all different, right? And they all had different conversations with Elisa, and they're all very graphic. They all had kind of a different motive with their conversation. You're very familiar with Matthew Menard out of Miami, who had serious plans to meet up with Elisa in Las Vegas and then go to Los Angeles and then go back to Miami and then have this sort of runaway together story. Even at one point saying, "Oh, we'll play it off where you can't be tracked, and I'll treat you kind of like my daughter." And then the other 2 were more on a physical conversation level with really sexual in nature, back and forth conversations. I find it hard to believe if any of them have actually ever met up with Elisa, although it seemed like at least was the plan for the man in Harriman, Samuel Mitchell, who was the last of the 3 we learned about. They had intentions of meeting up here locally. Samuel played it off like he was sick. Probably got cold feet based on obviously the circumstance. You're talking to a 15-year-old here, and you are not 15. And I don't get the sense William Glines in Texas City actually had much involvement in terms of wanting to meet up with Elisa physically. So each of these individuals had similar conversations, but different, all along the same line that levy exploitation and enticement of a minor charges, among other things, with child pornography and transferring images and all those things that, quite frankly, make this really sick, because at the end of the day, it is adult men talking to a 15-year-old here in Utah who's extremely vulnerable, and made that very clear in those conversations.
Yeah, it's I mean, these and I know you've read through all the court documents that are showing the conversations that these 3 men allegedly had with her. I mean, they are tough. It's a tough read. And unfortunately it is something that happens so often in cases like this. I know you've been in touch with Elisa's family. Her dad has been vocal. He's been in media interviews. What can you tell us about the family dynamic that's at play? And I know we talked about a TikTok description on social media, kind of showing her birthday and then the day she went missing. What can you tell us about what the family's saying?
Yeah, I sat down with Nikolai Petrov, who's Lisa's father, and we've been in contact for the better part of 5 weeks. We've done a number of interviews and had a number of long phone conversations and just dialogue almost daily about new pieces of the case and where Elisa could be. And at the end of the day, it seems like that's still the mystery, right? Where is she? Is she in Las Vegas? Is she being trafficked elsewhere? I've heard those things thrown out. And really, they're all just theories at this point, because I haven't heard from anybody that says, I've seen her somewhere other than Provo, Utah, that night she went missing after a runaway from school on the 21st of April. In terms of the family dynamic, obviously a tight-knit family, very focused on academics for Elisa and their other child. And I get the sense they wanted her to succeed. They wanted her to have this really good life. She was involved in figure skating. And we've talked at length about that, because that's a tough sport to get into. You need a little bit extra time and commitment to do this, which ultimately was the reason why Elisa went to school in American Fork, which is in Utah County. The family lives in Salt Lake County, I'd say about 20 minutes, 25 minutes away from their home. So she was there in hopes of being able to excel some of her school. She took some classes that ultimately transferred to college classes at a local university. Sounds like a really bright individual, a really bright child. And their family is also extremely tech savvy and intelligent. And we've sat down and just kind of talked about the social media stuff and the signs that were there. And Nikolai and I have talked at length about the steps that he and his wife took back in August of last year, when they noticed that she was talking to people online on her laptop. And he went to the great lengths of removing those apps and doing things. And when we spoke recently, he said, there's more I could have done. And this is a tech guy here. This is somebody who created a website for his daughter who was missing in what felt like minutes, and was able to just try to get everything out on social media because he sees the value of those conversations and the spreading of the picture and the information to get any eyeballs on this case, and eyeballs that hopefully get Elisa knocking on that front door one day saying, hey, I'm sorry I took off. I just want to come home. I also learned early on in this that Elisa never has run away before. So this is a first time situation from what I gathered. Although if you read some of those documents, there was an interesting sort of dynamic about how she was feeling being at home, maybe felt some pressure there from her parents. But a lot of that hasn't been made public and hasn't been publicized. And we were in their home yesterday talking to them just about how do you deal with this 5 weeks in the making? How do you put one foot in front of the other and go to work each day while your kid's not home and you don't know where she is?
Yeah, and it's just you think about what they're going through every single day, just waiting for police to hopefully give them a call with some good news, or if Elisa was to show up on the front doorstep. And I noticed in some of those charging documents, I think it was the one with Samuel Mitchell, where she had talked about her cell phone being taken away by her mom. But there's this iPad that seemed to connect police originally to Matthew Menard in Florida, and then I think Glines as well. What did they say? Have they said anything about this iPad that police found in her room?
We talked about it, and this family is, again, a tech family, has lots of devices in the home, lots of different things, multiple networks that they work on and things like that. So they were trying to do their best with the laptop and the cell phone and noticing her activity on those. There's a number of other tech sort of, computers and laptops in the home that are probably older. Like you and I might have an older laptop when we get a new one and just never get rid of it. And Elisa found that, and Elisa used that for whatever she wanted to do. And as you've noticed in those warrants and probable cause affidavits, these conversations were happening late at night and into the early morning hours by the timestamps that were listed from investigators when talking about these three men. So the iPad was a mystery. Dad clearly didn't know about it, and that's one that I'm sure he would have loved to have another shot at, knowing that this was on one of the networks and knowing what that device was, and then realizing, oh, this is the device that these men are, communicating with my 15-year-old, 14 turned 15-year-old daughter on, that ultimately resulted in her leaving the home. Because you can classify this as a runaway all you want, but a lot of people are saying the same thing. There was some luring here. It's very obvious when you look at the conversations with Matthew Menard. Oh, run away and we can have this life together, or we can go experience this together. Not just your standard runaway. There's that part of this, but there's also the luring aspect, which is why she's called endangered in this situation.
And I also think in like the Mitchell document, the man from Utah, police said that he had multiple videos of multiple girls, I believe, on his phone, that this was not, according to police, a one-off in his case. As far as the day that she went missing, and she was seen at this bus station, or the train station, excuse me, in Provo, where BYU is. Walk us through, for people who've been following this, of really what we know about the last time that anyone saw Elisa Petrov.
Well, let's go back beyond the train station. It was just before midnight when she did get off the train that day. So she went to school. She was seen at school, I believe. Mom dropped her off there. Then she took off. She went to the local gas station there that was nearby in American Fork. The school she went to isn't kind of what you'd imagine as a campus. It was kind of like a charter school that's almost in, I guess you could classify it, maybe a strip mall. And there's a couple of those that fall under the same name. So she was at that school, simply, I would imagine, just kind of walked out, went across the street to go where a lot of the kids go to get snacks and stuff. That's where you see that surveillance imagery, by the way, with her and the man who apparently drove her somewhere to get on the train and go from American Fork down to Provo, which is not a long distance, by the way, maybe 15 minutes on the train, 20 minutes on the train. So what she did in between that time is hard to understand. Did she walk around? Did she go talk to more people? There's a gap there in the day that I'm not certain of where she was before she went to Provo, because she got off that train late at night. Now, from what I understand, according to her parents, Basically, what they were able to see in some of that surveillance video that we're hoping to get from Utah Transit Authority in collaboration with South Jordan Police, which would show the last time really on camera that we're aware of Elisa Petrov being in the Provo area, that she walks off the train and starts to ask people basically, how do I get to Vegas? One of those was a woman that apparently dad also found when he went there the next day to go say, hey, have you seen my daughter? And this woman goes, yes, I have talked to her. Here's what she said. So we did get a little clue there. And I'm sure police are on that trail as well. Granted, it's been over a month now since she was on that train platform in Provo. So her whereabouts could be anywhere. But that's kind of what we know about that day, Chris.
Yeah, it's because you think of the plan that she potentially had with Menard to go to Las Vegas, and then Los Angeles was involved as well, and then go back to who knows where she could be. Do we know the last time? Because I know the 21st was the last time anyone saw her in that scene that we were just talking about. And then there's these communications like with Mitchell on the 19th. It was, hey, don't contact me, I'm running away, according to the document. Do you know the last time that anyone spoke with her, even if it's one of the three guys that are facing charges?
Sounds like it was just the parents that morning. It very well could have been somebody via text, but I don't get the sense that her phone's been used, that she's really been communicating with anybody. So I would have to imagine that the actual conversation, maybe with phone calls, was on that day, which is what makes this so disturbing, right? There's no trace. We use social media and technology. That's what police are using. That's why they filed for all those warrants from whatever those social media apps are, or the cell phone provider that she had on her. So there could be something else out there that police have uncovered based on getting access from those initial warrants. But as far as we understand it, and the public information that's been out there, is the last time she's talked to anybody physically was on April 21st. Somebody that involves family or friends at school or somebody close to her, or that face-to-face conversation with a stranger at the train platform in Provo that night.
Yeah, and it's to not see any internet activity. I mean, clearly she was, according to police, running away, but she's very online, it seems, as many teenagers are. And then it just has gone black in some ways since that day on the 21st. As far as Matthew Menard out of Miami, and I just want to get your thoughts on this because I found it surprising when he, on forget the day in May, might have been the 16th, that charges are put up against him for the conversations that he was allegedly having online. He's not in custody. A lawyer says that he's representing Matthew Menard, and then he's in custody on the 28th. You cover the Utah court system regularly. Just walk us through what might have happened there. It just seems like a very different way than some of these cases go.
Yeah, it was bizarre. And I think it was kind of disappointing that we didn't hear Matthew Menard in custody in Florida, uh, like we did with William Glines.
Right.
Local agencies communicating with local agencies, getting the job done. It's almost like they let him. I mean, the warrant was issued on the 20th, right, of May. So,
Yeah.
and he wasn't taken into custody when he voluntarily came to Utah, what, the 27th or the 28th? So about a week passed. That was very strange to me. I'm not a police officer, I'm not an investigator, but normally you've got a case like this where you've got a missing 15-year-old, you have someone who planned to meet up with her, she's been gone for a month, and you don't send the entire force down there in Miami, whether it's the county sheriff or local PD. You know they've had contact with him because they seized his phone and overnight shipped it to South Jordan, Utah. So it's almost like Menard went, sought counsel, counsel represented, filed in the court system, but then police for some reason didn't go pick him up. It makes me wonder if he had called police and said, hey, I'll be there in a few days. And they're like, fine, that's great. But to me, there's a level of urgency here. We've got a 15-year-old that's gone and is not just staying at a friend's house down the street, as you might imagine, but is gone. So why wouldn't you want to take one of the three men into custody, probably the one who was most verbal with her about their plans? Why wouldn't you want to go knock on his door and pluck him in and then take him into custody so people know, oh, this guy's, being looked into? And of course, there's due process and everyone deserves their time. But I was very surprised to hear, oh, he just showed up in Utah, basically knocked on the front door of PD and turned himself in after he had counsel representing him days prior. You're right. That was a unique one.
Yeah, you regularly don't see it. How has police been in communicating with the media during this?
Yeah, obviously I'm on one side of this too, and I have a great relationship with South Jordan Police. I take that very seriously. They won't talk publicly about it, but they have been, they've been transparent enough in the press release fashion to at least be updating the community. As always, I will say this openly and honestly. I'll probably say this till I, sometime retire from television or media. There's good level of transparency that can be said without compromising an investigation. I think we could use that here. I think people would like to hear, oh, we've put in 24/7, on this. We've had people out of state. We've had people investigating this. We have people in Vegas. We have all these things. It'd be nice to know a little bit more without saying, oh, we're looking at 17 other people and we're tracking this. You don't have to get into those details. But I think the public now has so much interest in this, not because of just the local media, but because of conversations like you and I are having on a bigger scale platform that allows people really worldwide to see this. I think that would resonate with people more if we just heard from them, even if they answered questions saying, I can't tell you that because we don't want to compromise this. There's delicacies, right? That's how each department will handle these. But I think it would be nice to hear a little bit more, somebody answering some questions, because there's such a microscope on this department. And it's clear they're doing work, Chris. I mean, look at the 3 men that were taken into custody. It's not like it just happens. We have investigators, detectives that are doing their due diligence on this case. But I think people want to know, how are you trying to find the kid now that you got the 3 guys?
Right. And then just lastly, Brian, I know you know the area around Salt Lake, the area where all of this is happening. I mean, set the scene for us of South Jordan. You have Harriman, where Mitchell was from, American Fork, as we were talking about, where she went to school. Kind of what's the lay of the land of where this story is taking place?
So you're looking at Salt Lake City basically as a great landmark. Everything we're talking about is south and primarily west of Salt Lake City. South Jordan's maybe a 30-minute drive from downtown Salt Lake. And then Harriman is a little bit further southwest, in a community that has just exploded, by the way. I mean, with so much growth over the last 5-6 years I've been here. But it borders South Jordan on that southwest side. So it's not far. American Fork is down in Utah County. I say down because it's just south of where, South Jordan is. Again, about a 15-20-minute drive straight down the main interstate here that runs north and south through the state of Utah. Beautiful part of the country. Encourage anyone to come out and visit. But we do have our fair share of cases that we talk about because there's been a lot of growth here. There's been a lot of crime activity that has caught the attention nationally because of either children are involved. This is a very child-enriched state where there's a lot of large families. There's a lot of care for the children. Having a child myself here in this state, I love it. There's so much to do for kids. There's so many opportunities. So when we talk about children in the state, it strikes a chord with a lot of people wanting those answers and wanting the best possible scenario. But at this point, we're just waiting for some answers and constantly checking to see if there's any other people involved. I will say Samuel Mitchell was a surprise to me. I expected maybe that we would learn more over time about maybe some other individuals, because based on the conversations Elisa was having, I imagined it wasn't just 2 people that are on the opposite side of the country that she is talking to. So Mitchell, in a way, caught me by surprise. And I'm glad we learned about that, because that gave us a local connection basically down the street from where she lived. And then all of these very bizarre coast to coast, it just shows the strength of these apps and the internet connection and how anybody can reach our children. And that's something we talked about at length earlier this week with the Utah Attorney General's office when they came on my show. Predators, it's a thing. It's on the rise. It's not something to be ignored, especially if you're a parent. And they say, be annoying about these things with your kids. Take these steps, because if, find that balance of that great lifestyle with your kids, but also letting them have a little freedom, but also not being on your phone at 10 o'clock at night while everyone's sleeping in the house or at midnight, because bad things happen after what, 10, 11, any time of day. But this is a great reminder for parents to be really vigilant with their kids.
No, it really is. And some of these apps, like I talk about it often. I mean, I did find it interesting that, at least in the case with Menard, I mean, Instagram, where that feels almost to younger kids these days, it's not the hot new app like it was maybe 10 years ago, but then Roblox comes up, Discord comes up, Snapchat's had issues as well. And there's just many times in these cases, there's so much controversy surrounding the apps. This is a scary case, and hopefully, she knocks on the door sometime soon and is back home and safe. Brian Schnee, KUTV 2 News in Utah. Thanks for taking the time to be with us. It is so great to have you on Law and Crime. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Joining us now from Utah to talk about this case is retired police commander and the host of Profiling Evil, Mike King. We always appreciate your time here on Law and Crime. Thanks for being here.
It's really good to be with you.
First, talking about, because I know that this is a story, of course, people in Utah have been following, and we have as well. When you look at the search for Elisa Petrov right now, what stands out to you about what we know about her last whereabouts and where she could be today?
I think the thing that's the most troubling to me is the amount of information that's coming out. On the one hand, as someone who wants to know, I'm a little frustrated that there isn't a little more information coming out. But the investigator in me says, thank goodness law enforcement's keeping this information close to the vest. It's a really tough challenge, though, because you want the public engaged, you want the public aware, you want the public knowing where to look. And this has been a problem, in my opinion, with things like the Amber Alerts that sometimes canvas too large of an area too soon. And so people become a little numb to it and they quit looking versus, hey, we know that this individual, this child has traveled from the South Salt Lake Valley area down to Provo. Maybe those kinds of alerts and notifications and real pushes by the media should be more localized so that people really get an idea, hey, in the last couple of hours, we believe this person was here. If they really believe that she transitioned and caught a bus from Salt Lake City area or the Salt Lake Valley area to Las Vegas, then maybe those should be kind of a transition, kind of a wave of information release that midpoints in Utah or down into the Las Vegas area, that those are released in a timely manner to where we believe this person might be in the Las Vegas area right now, versus now people don't even know where to begin to look. And so you start to become a little bit blind to everything.
Yeah, and I think the last place that she was seen was the train station there in Provo. And she had been seen at a convenience store, and then to this, was able to get a stranger to give her a ride, police say, to this train station. And then that's the last time they see her, that she was on foot from security cameras. How, and I'm not trying to say like, how does police lose her, but in terms of those blind spots, because you would think that, okay, there's a surveillance camera here, there's a surveillance camera here. How difficult is it to actually track the whereabouts of someone when they're at a place where there's security cameras like a train station, but then it seems like that's the last place that they saw her?
I think we get so accustomed to seeing the lucky times when law enforcement's able to find a CCTV camera or something that might somehow put this person in a location. Certainly when we get into a neighborhood, we can say, hey, are there ring cameras that saw this kid leaving the school and walking across to the business where she then starts to make her move and go toward Provo. And then in Provo, we know some specific locations, but these are needles, I would say even microscopic needles in incredibly large haystacks. And so sometimes as we start getting frustrated because on television we see people being tracked as they walk down the street from one camera to another, that's just not the reality. In addition to that, in Utah and in Provo in particular, there are a lot of kids that are in these age ranges. There are a lot of kids walking down the street, or even maybe in some of these public transportation sites. That's an area where if this is a more mature looking kid, especially if she's got now on bigger, baggier clothes and she's walking along, she could be mixed into a population where it's pretty easy to overlook her, especially if you're not looking for her in the first place. But then to go back and try to go through all of the cameras, even with AI and the ability to now start picking out and pixelating individuals through facial recognition and other things, it is still a monumental task to be able to find this individual, especially if the individual doesn't want to be seen.
Right, and she's considered she's endangered but a runaway because she had spoken of wanting to run away from home, which might complicate some things. I want to turn the attention to the three suspects right now. They are all in custody. One of them's in Texas. Two of them are in the Salt Lake County Jail. What stands out to you when you look at? And there's still a lot that we don't know about them, but we do know what they allegedly said to this 15-year-old girl online. What stands out to you about that?
Yeah, I mean the communications are so disturbing, and the grooming process that went on is so indicative of somebody who's been at this for a while, in my opinion, that they're able to go in and somehow convince this child to start revealing things about themselves, to start sharing information, even photographs from what some of the indications are about herself, but then using that as a way to control this teenager. And that may be some of the most disturbing parts of this is the grooming process that goes on. And so it makes you really start to wonder if these are actually isolated incidences. One who apparently lived fairly close to where Petrov lived,
Mhm.
one who's in Texas, one who's in Miami, Florida, and what are the possibilities that these three individuals are somehow stumbling across this person who's wanting to have communication with people outside, wanting to maybe dip her toe in the water of, hey, this is a little bit dangerous, but kind of fun to have all of this attention. And we don't know what led to those communications other than as law enforcement starts to uncover information from the surface, the deep, and the dark web, I think they'll see more about the chat rooms that this young woman was in, the kinds of communications that were going on. But all of this leads me back to the idea, are they truly three independent people that happened to find this person? And was she actively out looking for a bunch of relationships, which might be shown in the communications as they look on that secret iPad that they recovered that shows that she was out actively searching out people? Or is this more of a coordinated effort and she happened to be targeted and then part of a network started to get involved in recruiting her?
Yeah, and that's the thing too for at least two, which was Gleans and Menard. She allegedly she was speaking with them on Instagram, which is such a mainstream app. And then Mitchell, who was the third person who was identified, who lives in Utah, that was on Discord, which is controversial, and you hear about it. You hear about it a lot in some of these really disturbing cases. Matthew Menard, who's from Miami. It was just I don't know if I'd seen it before, but you worked in law enforcement, so you're a good person to ask about this. He was charged on the 16th of May with these very serious sex crimes for allegedly having these very disturbing communications with Elisa Petrov, who had been missing for several weeks. He wasn't in custody until May 29th, but in the middle of that, a law firm, they say they're representing him, and then he was able to surrender to authorities. Walk us through what you think happened here and why that case was handled that way, where you have someone like William Leans, who's in Texas, and he was arrested, and he's also facing charges in Texas because he allegedly sent some of these text messages while he was in that state.
Yeah, it's interesting on the Floridian. I think it's really kind of interesting to point out a couple of things. Number one is, by all accounts, this is someone who is established in the community, established in a work profession, an IT profession, and when law enforcement reached out, either immediately or very close to that, contacted a lawyer, and that lawyer may have been in communication with law enforcement. And there's a really troubling thing that occurs if you arrest somebody out of state. For instance, if Utah had sent a warrant and said to the Floridian law enforcement, hey, go out and pick this guy up, then he's going to sit in jail. There's going to be a hearing in Florida to determine if he can be extradited back to Utah. And if he fights that extradition, it could be a 30-day plus kind of an event just trying to get him back. Versus if that lawyer says, hey, my client's willing to help you find this missing teenager, and we're going to have him fly back and you can make your arrest and we want to kind of coordinate things. It might be all the beginnings of some negotiated pleas that are going to happen somewhere down the line. But most importantly, it may have been the most efficient way for law enforcement to get him back to Utah, get him formally charged, and perhaps start setting up some type of interview or interrogation, obviously with his attorney in play in this entire thing. So those could be some of the considerations going on. We're not privy to what was really happening behind the scenes, and if this thing is coordinated and somebody is willing to start talking, how important that could be and why you might make some concessions.
And in his case, he not only had these very disturbing conversations with her, police say, but also he talked about this plan where, according to the document, that they were going to meet in Las Vegas because in late May he had a work event there. They stopped talking on April 20th. She disappears on April 21st. And then it was they were going to go to Los Angeles and then they were going to go to Florida. Even though all of that was said, he's arrested in Florida. How likely is it that any of these three people at this point that we know about had any in-person contact with Elisa Petrov?
Well, it seems less likely that they actually met face to face based on what's been released publicly. And again, we don't know, which really takes you back to this idea of a coordinated human trafficking effort and whether they were part of a scheme or individually part of a scheme to get her to a location where a handler might then show up and say, "Hey, I'm sorry, you were going to meet so and so, but they're tied up in a meeting, but they asked me to stop by and pick you up and bring you over to the office," or something like that. And that handoff occurs and then the abduction occurs. So it's really troubling to think about this with so little information, which is what we all in the true crime community are left with in these kinds of cases, because we don't know if it was coordinated or if it was individual. But from the way people were picked up and the way things were happening, it seems less likely that any of those three individuals actually physically met face to face with Miss Petrov, and that creates just such frightening ideas in your mind of a much more coordinated effort.
And just lastly, Mike, because having your career in law enforcement, the things you've seen, and I feel like so much of this, if you're a parent, it's terrifying that and in the case of Elisa Petrov, like she was on YouTube, she wanted to be a vlogger, very innocent teenage stuff that you see. She was very much online, as so many kids are. How is it that people like the three people who are accused of having conversations with her, how do they get in touch with a 15-year-old? How does this happen? Especially, I think about on Instagram. How is it that a predator, allegedly, like Matthew Menard, is able to find this 15-year-old girl and then have these horrific conversations that police say that he had with her?
Yeah, I mean, I guess a couple of things that come up to me first. Number one is, would a 15-year-old truly just completely ghost their entire social network or their family? That's really troubling. And when we think about where does this initial contact happen, we have to go back to the idea that a lot of these predators will go and they will imitate and go online to chat groups or gaming platforms or other places where they can get the kind of preferential victim that they're looking for and start to groom them. And they don't start out by saying, "Hey, I'm a 40-year-old predator that wants to get you to come to Las Vegas and abduct you." They start out with, "I'm a 15-year-old boy who happens to live in near you, or I want to meet up with you," or something. But for some reason, this thing shifted in the kinds of discussions that were going on to where it was probably pretty clear that these were older men. And that may have been exciting for a moment to this person. I don't know. The thing that's so terrifying is that if we look at the statistics in the United States alone, I mean, roughly 875,000 people, according to the Bureau of Justice, every single year disappear for a short period of time. Did Elisa Petrov voluntarily disappear because she's on some kind of a fantasy vacation. It doesn't seem likely because she's gone now a month, and somebody who is so socially active, it makes no sense that she would do this. I'm troubled by that stinking iPad, and whether if it was a secret iPad in her bedroom that was found, was it somehow supplied to her by one of these predators? And that became a form of communication and perhaps even a controlled form of communication? Or was it something she went out on her own and purchased and just wanted to do to keep a secret life away from her rather public or private life that her family might know about? Those are the kinds of questions I start having. But that 875,000 that I was talking about, the reason why that's so significant is most of them come home. But according to the Bureau of Justice and according to statistics from the last 30 or 40 years, it's going to be roughly 105 to 110,000 people that we never hear from again. And that is a terrifying statistic when you start to think about what the possibilities are in cases like this, and why it is so absolutely important that we continue to have child abuse task forces that are going over activity on the web and trying to find these predatory behaviors out there and bringing people to justice as quickly as possible. But that doesn't alleviate the concern that we have, people like you and me, to continually pound the drum of how important it is to be vigilant in these kinds of things and to have communication with our kids. Perhaps not even have some democracy when it comes to our children, that we're really looking at the kinds of places that they're exploring, the kinds of areas where they're going into chats and other kinds of things to help keep these kids who haven't got fully developed brains from getting into risky positions where they might have life-altering events happen.
Yeah, it's so important. Those are chilling stats. And you think that she was last seen April 21st, and now we're almost at June, and the search is continuing
Horrifying.
on. Yeah, Mike King, retired police commander, host of Profiling Evil. It's always great to have your perspective on law and crime. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
The Petrov family has launched a website with pictures of Elisa, and they're offering a $20,000 reward for information that could lead her to coming home. That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law&Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.